And good morning once again, my brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ. Welcome to another Living Hope Today study. And today we are in Exodus chapter 12. God has finally had enough. He's presented all these plagues to Pharaoh. Pharaoh says, I'm not letting the people go. God says, here comes one final plague. But as we enter chapter 12, before we get to God's administration of the plague, we get to God's instruction for his people about what's about to happen. And this is something that carries over into the New Testament profoundly. We're not going to unpack that completely today, but we're going to get to some of it. I just want you to think about Jesus, the Lamb of God, dying on a cross with his shed blood covering the sins of all who believe as we look at this story. But today, Passover instructions. Let me show you what I mean. When we get to chapter 12, verse 1, we read this. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in Egypt, this month is to be for you the first month of your year. So the first thing God does is he prepares to deliver his people from the Pharaoh of Egypt and from slavery, is he updates their calendar. I don't know how you've been keeping time before, but hey, this is going to be your first month. As my people, get your calendar together. We're starting this month. Happy New Year. Here we go. Tell the whole community of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, 10 days in, each man is to take a lamb for his family, one for each household. Okay, so now we're getting pretty specific, right? We're going to adjust the calendar. Then what are we going to do? We're going to look for the 10th day of the month. Then what are we going to do? We're going to have every man take a lamb. If any household is too small for a whole lamb, they must share with one of their nearest neighbors. Having taken into account the number of people there are, you are to determine the amount of lamb needed in accordance with what each person will eat. Okay, so, wow, God, before you deliver your people from Israel, you reset the calendar, you issue the command that every man comes to get a lamb on the 10th day of the month. Okay, it's to feed the whole household. If your household's too small, then combine your household with another small household. What the point here is, we don't want any leftovers. No leftovers. We're going to consume the lamb as you've called us to on the day you want us to, with the restrictions you require. Okay, so here comes some restrictions. The animals you choose, well, they've got to be year-old males. They've got to be without defect. And you may take from the sheep or the goats. Okay, so there's a little leniency in God's part, but it's still really, really specific. Take care of them until the 14th day of the month. Okay, so you go get them, and then you wait until the 14th day of the month, when all the people of the community of Israel must slaughter them at twilight. Okay, so now we're talking, here comes the day and time I want you to sacrifice these lambs that you've gotten. Very, very detailed, specific instruction, but don't miss this, don't miss this. Take care of them. Can you imagine how cute a 1-year-old little lamb is? I guess a lot of us city people don't have any idea, but okay, so here comes, the little lamb into our household. We're taking care of it. We get to bond with that little lamb for a few days before we slaughter it and eat it. In other words, there's some emotional connection to the lamb that's brought about through the way God has designed this Passover meal. Verse 7, then they are to take some of the blood and put it on the sides of and tops of the door frames of the houses where they eat the lamb. So, okay, we're not just going to eat the lamb. What are we going to do? we're going to take the blood of the lamb. Does that bring you to any New Testament ideas? The blood of the lamb, and we're going to cover the doorposts, top and sides. We're going to cover the doorposts with blood. The blood of the lamb, the blood of the innocent, sinless lamb that was just sacrificed. Okay? That's the command of God. That same night, they are to eat the meat roasted over the fire, along with bitter herbs and bread made without yeast. So now God's telling us how he wants the meat prepared. Just consider the specificity of this passage. Okay, this is how I want you to cook it. Roast it over the fire. Put some bitter herbs in there. Now, there's some scholarly advice on why bitter herbs are here, but I don't think this is the main part of the story. It doesn't get repeated. What gets repeated is this next part. Bread without yeast. Watch this. So God makes it very specific, very plain. Do not eat the meat raw. Do not eat the meat cooked in water, but roast it over the fire. Head, legs, and inner parts. Okay, we're having a barbecue. That's what this is about. Do not leave any of it till morning. There you go. No leftovers. How specific, God. Look at you. If some is left till morning, you must burn it. You cannot keep it. We're not letting you take it with you. That's it. He says, this is how you are to eat it. Wow. Now we're going to get not only when to get the animal, how to take care of the animal, when to kill the animal, how to cook it, but what to put with it. Now we're going to get, this is what you're supposed to wear when you eat it. Wow, this is how you, with your cloak tucked into your belt, okay? And your sandals on your feet and your staff in your hand. Eat it in haste. In other words, you're supposed to eat it in a posture of, I got to go. It's time to leave. We got to be ready to move. All right? The symbolism here is incredible. It says it's the Lord's Passover, and then God tells them what he's going to do. On that night, that same night, I will pass through Egypt. I will strike down every firstborn, both men and animals. I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. So every firstborn is going to die. Pharaoh, all the way down to the slave. Every firstborn is going to die. And God is telling them what? I am judging you. Why am I judging you? Well, because you have false gods. I'm putting this judgment on all the gods of Egypt, which are nothing. I am the Lord. How many times have we heard that? God says, look, the blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you. Oh, that's where the word Passover comes from. God passes over the households that are covered in the blood of the Lamb. If you're covered in the blood of the Lamb, you don't receive the judgment of death. Wow, does that ring a bell in the New Testament? It should. No destructive plague will touch you when I strike Egypt. Why not? Because you're covered by the blood of the Lamb. This is a day you are to commemorate for the generations to come. You shall celebrate it as a festival to the Lord, a lasting ordinance. So, okay, I've given you very specific instructions about when to do it, how to do it, what to eat with it, what to wear while you eat it, how to cook it, how to have no leftovers. I've given you detailed instruction. Now, here's another instruction. Celebrate it. Year after year. When you get to that first month of the year, remember it. Celebrate it. It's a festival. It's a lasting ordinance. Don't quit. Even today, you see the Jewish population celebrating Passover. Now, God begins to outline what the celebration is supposed to be about. For 7 days, you are to eat bread made without yeast. On the first day, remove the yeast from your houses, for whoever eats anything with yeast in it from the first day through the seventh must be cut off from Israel. Wow. So God's really against yeast. If you're eating bread with yeast in it, you're going to get cut off from your people. What is going on, God? Why is that important to you? This is the day you are to commemorate. Did I do it again? I think I did it again. Lately I've had this problem. I keep repeating a slide, but I'm just going to keep going through here. Bear with me. I apologize. So then we go on the first day, hold a sacred assembly, and another one on the seventh day. Okay, so now we're getting told about the celebration and what days we're to assemble. Do no work at all on these days. I'm sure that's good news for many, except to prepare food for everyone to eat. So we're not including food preparation in the no work decree, but that's all you can do, all right? Celebrate the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Okay, now we see this throughout Judaism and in the New Testament even, but notice it's beginning here in Exodus 12:17. The Feast of Unleavened Bread, it's tied directly to the Passover. Celebrate it because it was on this very day that I brought your divisions out of Egypt. Celebrate this day as a lasting ordinance, again, for generations to come. Here we go. In the first month, you are to eat bread made without yeast. Okay, now we're covering the whole month, from the evening of the 14th day until the evening of the 21st day. Again, we have some very specific timing here. For 7 days, no yeast is to be found in your houses, and whoever eats anything with yeast in it must be cut off from the community of Israel. So God repeats himself. Look, I don't want any yeast. From the 14th day to the 21st day, it's 7 days, no yeast. Do you get it? He says it over and over. And hey, guess what? If you can't abide by my instruction, then you're going to get cut off from your people. Well, did you get the point yet? Look at this. Eat nothing made with yeast. Wherever you live, you must eat unleavened bread. Well, why is God against yeast? When I looked it up, it said, well, people are to eat bread without yeast. It reminds them of the Exodus when the Israelites fled Egypt. They left in haste. They didn't have time to let their dough rise. Okay, so one of the reasons no yeast, there's no time. We can't let the bread rise. We are in a hurry, and that's meant to remind us of that. It's also, yeast is a symbol of humility. Yeast, or leaven is another word for that, is often associated with pride or sin because it puffs up the dough. It's symbolic. Eating unleavened bread represents humility and purity before God. Obedience to God's command is another reason, even today, unleavened bread is commanded. Why? Because God explicitly instructed the Israelites to eat unleavened bread for 7 days during the Passover. This was a sign of their covenant. This was a sign of their obedience. And then a fourth reason yeast is given so much attention, it's looked at as spiritual cleansing. If you remove leaven from the home before Passover, it represents getting rid of sin and corruption. It's making room for holiness. This idea is brought into the New Testament when Paul writes to the church at Corinth in chapter 5. He says, get rid of the old yeast that you may be a new batch without yeast, as you really are. For Christ, our Passover lamb, has been sacrificed. Therefore, let us keep the festival not with the old yeast, the yeast of malice and wickedness. That would refer to life by the law, but with the bread without yeast, the bread of sincerity and truth. Just notice how purity and walking uprightly before God is associated with bread without yeast, even in the New Testament. Okay, so before we quit today, I got to hurry along here, but let's just go through some of these instructions just to sort of solidify what we've been told, because there's a bunch. God says, look, we're going to have the Passover. I want it to happen on the first month of the year, during the first month of the year, and when it happens, that's going to be your first month. I want you to take a lamb on the 10th, one per household. But if you have a small family, then share a lamb. The point, we don't want to have any leftovers. Animals have to be year-old males without blemish, and we want you to take care of them from the 10th to the 14th. Bring them into your house. Let your kids become friends with them. Let everybody see them, and then slaughter them. Oh, the brutal reality of what it takes to forgive sin. Slaughter them on the 14th. Slaughter them at twilight. Now, we could fast forward to the New Testament here and talk about the exact moment Jesus is crucified, but let me just spill the beans here. There is an exact parallel between when the Savior lowers his head and says, "It is finished," and twilight on the 14th. Okay, he says, put their blood on the door frames. Be sure you cover the top and the sides, and that same night, eat the roasted meat. Take it in. Include bitter herbs, include bread without yeast. Here's the 10th instruction, no leftovers. 11, eat it fast. Tuck in your cloak, get your sandals on, put your staff in your hand, commemorate this day for generations. I want this to turn into a celebration. Eat bread without yeast for 7 days. Remove yeast from your house on day 1. First day and 7th day, hold a sacred assembly. Don't work at all from the 1st to the 7th. You can prepare the food, but that's it. And then celebrate the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Eat unleavened bread from the afternoon of the 14th, twilight, to the 21st. We still haven't seen God deliver his people. But what God is foreshadowing through this deliverance is his salvation plan. More about that as we gather again next time. God bless you, church. Serve him well.